Hi, I'm Amanda.
And I'm Kim.
And this is The Department, a podcast about trends and how they define the world around us. Welcome to the sexiest episode of all. Episode 69. Kim, be mature. You only get to have an episode 69 one time.
That's true. So it's going to be really special.
Really special.
It's going to be a really special, romantic evening.
Sensual
Christmas.
Light some candles, maybe put on some lotion, a nice teddy, and get ready for episode 69 of The Department. So, as you all know, I traveled to Japan after the holidays, and Kim and I thought it might be good to talk about the trends that I saw there. And boy, did I see some really incredible trends. In the realm of buying here in the United States, we always look to Japan to be on the cutting edge of fashion, especially in the younger market. And for years, men's buyers have been going hard on Japanese shopping as inspiration for product stories here in the United States. I worked with this one guy. Listen, I'm just going to tell you, he's kind of a cheeseball, and he not an unrefrigerated.
Yeah, that sounded delicious for a second. I was like, what kind of cheese ball are we talking?
Not like a Swiss colony cheese ball.
Or are we talking about like the little puffs, like the cheese ball puffs?
Yes, the ones that get the orange stains on your skin. This guy was kind of a cheese ball, and he was head of men's for a big retailer I've worked for, we'll just say. And basically all he would do is go to Japan like twice a year for way longer than he needed to, and just like take photos of everything, come back and copy it. Even down to like how he dressed on a daily basis. And it was so weird to me. Like I was dude, bro, like have your own identity. Anyway, men's buyers, especially in like the younger or more contemporary market, have been really looking to Japan for years now. And more women's buyers have been going in that direction too. And it is true that in the 6 years that I have been traveling to Japan pretty regularly, I have seen ideas and trends happening there about a year or two before they happen here. And that can be fashion trends, but can also be home interior trends, social trends, just like the kinds of characters and merch people like to buy. It always starts there. Why? I have no idea. But I am so excited to share all of the things I saw while I was there, because it was super inspiring to me as a person who loves thinking about this kind of stuff. And I get so much personal and creative inspiration every time, everywhere I go, but especially in Japan, because it's just everywhere. And man, it felt so good to be back there.
I've only been once. But it was really amazing. And, I went for a shopping trip, so all I did was shopping and eating, of course. So
you gotta eat. Yeah.
So it's really exciting to be able to explore all of the finery that Japan has to offer. And everyone got Christmas gifts from Japan that year and they were very excited. Yes.
Yeah. Best gifts. Like gifting is such a big deal from a social perspective in Japan.
It is.
So like, I think we might have talked about this a couple episodes ago, but like all of the train stations, for example, are filled with shopping opportunities.
Yes, with like gifts.
They all have like a mall. Yeah, and it's all gift.
You go and you get your gift before you go somewhere else, because you have to stock up on gifts and give out gifts to wherever you're going.
Right. And it's a lot of food gifts.
Yep, lots of cookies.
But it's other stuff too. Really into like regional food gifts, which I think is great. Like imagine if someone came to visit you. I don't know. To me, as a person who grew up in Pennsylvania, the thing that people would always bring you when you lived somewhere else is they would bring you tasty cakes and Yingling beer.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I don't know.
What's a tasty cake?
You know what? They used to be really good when I was a kid, and I've definitely eaten my share of tasty cakes, but it's like a Pennsylvania bakery. It's like snack cakes. Better than Little Debbie.
Okay.
Well, I mean, I don't know. I would say now
Little Debbie is pretty delicious.
Yeah, I would say now Little Debbie is winning because I think that like when we were kids, they used more real ingredients and whatnot in tasty cakes, but over years, like all processed foods that we've grown up with,
the quality has gone down.
Big time. Whereas like I don't know what they're doing at Little Debbie's, but it holds. It holds up still.
Yeah.
So Little Debbie's number one for sure.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, like imagine if Little Debbie's were only something you could get back home and someone brought them to you in LA. Like that's pretty cool. You know?
That is. It's very cool.
So I love the food gifting, but in general, Japan is really a culture of gifting, and you give a lot of gifts to a lot of people. A lot. And that means the shopping there is pretty incredible. Mm-hmm. Definitely major consumerism environment. Like honestly, and I'm sure you experienced this too, Kim, like the opportunity to spend money you're surrounded by it at all times.
That's true.
Like, I'm at the train station.
Particularly the novelty of it, where you're just like, oh my God, there's all this stuff that I've never seen before.
Right,
and it's so incredible.
And it's like, there's coin machines everywhere to buy little trinkets, and like everything has a gift shop, and it's like the best gift shop you've ever been to. And all the transportation hubs are filled with shopping malls, and the shopping malls themselves are like the best shopping malls, which we'll talk about more in this episode as well. But just in general, like Japan is a country that has in real life brick and mortar retail on lockdown. It's so good. They're just doing the best version of it.
I'm so jealous that you just got to go. That's so awesome. I'm so excited to hear what you saw. Sorry, I have a dog nosing me, and it's like
well, it is episode 69.
It's 4:30, and apparently he thinks that it's his dinner time. So hopefully he'll relax for another hour. Otherwise, I might have to get up and feed him to make him leave me alone.
Okay, we're on dog food watch right now.
Yeah, right.
So I am going to tell you, Kim, that I am planning that I am probably going to go back to Japan in like May.
Wow.
And that's because one, I am a mega thrifty traveler, and two, I am a mega thrifty person in real life. So I like rarely eat out in restaurants or go out for drinks or do anything else. So I can spend money to travel because it's like my greatest joy in life. And
you're a really good traveler too.
I am a really good traveler.
Plan, and you know exactly what you're going to do, and it's just you've got that on lockdown. Also,
I love organizing a trip, and almost as much as I like being on the trip. And you know what? Like the other thing is, I didn't get to do all the things I wanted to do. That week went by really fast. So
I can imagine. Yes.
Yeah. So I have so much to tell you, but of course, all of you are waiting. When is Kim going to give her spiel? So Kim, go for it.
I'll do it really fast. All right. It's our weekly reminder just to, let your friends know about the podcast. I'm always recommending podcasts to people, including my very own. But the second I hear something, I'm immediately telling everyone. So please get on the horn. Let everyone know about the department. Second, also make sure to follow us on any of your preferred streaming services. Not only do you get notified, but it helps us be seen more. The more people we have following us, the more credit we get for our credibility we get from the podcast service. So, follow on all the accounts you have, if you really want to help out. And then lastly, also give us a star rating and review on Apple Podcasts. Those are also appreciated. And then last but not least, give us a follow on Instagram. We have a great community on there, lots of inside jokes and lots of colorful images and follow-ups during each week. We push forward a bunch of visual imagery of things that we're talking about on the podcast. So it's always fun to follow that. And if you're looking for any show notes, any image references, you can find it on our website, thedepartment.world.
Thank you, Kim. I just wanted to say that one of my favorite phrases to work into conversation is get on the horn.
Get on the horn.
The best. Bring it back. Bring it back. So thanks for using that. Okay. So today we're going to talk about what I saw on my trip to Japan. And I would suspect, especially when we talk about the style trends here, that we're going to see this stuff roll into the U.S. in the coming year or so. in case you all missed it, well, you all missed this because a lot of this will be edited out. Kim had to take a break to feed the dog. We did not make it through the whole episode.
We didn't.
We didn't.
Barely. I didn't think it was going to happen because he was loitering around. And I was like, he's not going to relax.
No, yeah, I get it. Once it's in their head, that's that. And I just had the same yelling at my cat situation like an hour ago. Okay. They're like trying to push up mealtime every day, just a little bit earlier. Like Janet's like hanging out in the food area starting at 4:30 and dinner is at 6. And then she starts meowing, and so then everybody's like, "Oh, are we eating now?" And then everyone shows up and is like harassing me.
Oh God!
Yeah, Janet,
chaos,
Janet. So okay, we fed the dog. Now we're going to talk about Japan trends. And the first thing I just wanted to touch on, because I know if we don't mention this, someone is definitely going to bring it up on an Instagram, is this week has been a pretty epic week for Gwen Stefani. A person I had low-key forgotten about, except for like I saw her on The View a few years ago, and I was like, who is that person?
Oh, I just saw her in The Aviator.
Really?
We just watched The Aviator, and I was like, oh, it's like Gwen Stefani.
She's had so much work done.
Oh, like, oh my God, I gotta look.
I was like, Dustin, who is that woman? And he was like, I don't know. And then I said, she seems so familiar. She must be like a famous musician. And then I did Google it, and I was like, "That
it is
Gwen
Whoa,
Stefani."
Her face.
Yeah. I mean, listen, do what makes you happy, but wow, Gwen Stefani is really way different. Anyway, you know, she's infamous for appropriating all kinds of culture over her lifetime. She gave a really bad interview this week. I can't even remember who it was. Was it Vanity Fair? I don't know, but she, you know, as far as I can tell, without anyone bringing it up, really
Allure. It was Allure.
Okay. Put her foot in her mouth about the way she has appropriated Japanese culture in the past. I mean, she had a whole brand called Harajuku Girls, remember? And a whole video and a song and all those perfumes. We sold that stuff at Urban Outfitters back in the day. Like, we sold so much of it. It all smelled really bad. And, you know, anyway, I just wanted to bring it up that,
what did it smell like?
Things I don't like, flowery or air freshenery, or you know how, I don't know, I'm really uptight about fragrance, and I only like things that have like a natural smell. And a lot of like lab created fragrances, I mean, they're artificial, they're made from esters. They tend to have this like really specific sort of like inauthentic fragrance to them. There are a few fragrances like that are, you know, I know are developed the same way, that like unlock memories for me and are very tolerable. Like I kind of still like Clinique Cappy. I mean, I wouldn't wear it, but I smell it and I'm like, oh, or like,
yeah, that's nostalgia right there.
Or Marc Jacobs Daisy. That's another one where if I get a whiff of it, I'm like, oh yeah, that was nice. I remember the Harajuku Lovers perfume. It was like so cute. It was in these adorable bottles, but it's like you wanted to like it, but then you smelled it and you were like, yeah, no, this is like not for me. Anyway, you know, us talking about Japan and the trends out of Japan we're not trying to be Gwen Stefani over here. But what we are talking about is a phenomenon that I can't fully understand why it happens this way, but just so many style trends in the past 10 years, maybe even longer, have come directly from Japan. It's the most interesting thing to me. So one thing I noticed immediately when we arrived in Tokyo was the economic impact of several years of no international tourism. It was really noticeable. Yeah.
How many years has it been since you've been there?
Well, I haven't been there since late 2019. We were supposed to go in spring of 2020, but obviously could not. And Japan has been closed to tourists for quite some time. In fact, international visitors were allowed to return late last summer, but it was a part of this sort of Byzantine tour group structure where you would have to be with a tour group the whole time and pay them a fee. And the idea was like, it was to keep track of you, right? Make sure you're wearing a mask and you're not wandering around being typhoid Mary, COVID Mary, I guess.
Breathing all over people.
Right. And so a lot of people were sort of like, that's not for me. It's definitely not for me. I don't want to ride it around on a bus with a bunch of people. But also it was expensive because you would take the regular expenses of going on a big trip like this and then add a couple $1,000s to be a part of a tour group. So it brought in some tourism, but like I don't think it was as much as the Japanese government had hoped.
Not a lot of people would want that kind of
So it pretty fast it turned out that wasn't having much of an impact. And so in October, the country fully opened its doors to international travelers. You have to be fully vaxxed. You have to have at least 3 shots. If you come in from China, you have to have a negative test. That was after almost 3 years of no international tourism. And I had an inkling, in the past that tourism was a big part of the Japanese economy, just based on things I would see and experience when I was there. But I started reading a lot more about this during the pandemic, especially in the past year, as more and more Japanese people were becoming disgruntled with the economic impact of basically shutting the country off to the rest of the world. And so I was seeing more content and information around that. And so I knew that it was like a pretty big deal, but I got to tell you, I looked into the value of the Japanese tourism market, and it kind of blew my mind in terms of the size of it. So in 2019, last year before the pandemic, the economic impact of Japanese tourism was estimated at almost 56 trillion yen, which unless any of you are really great at converting, I'll tell you that with the value of the yen against the dollar today, which is really low, that's 422 billion with a B, wow, US dollars. To get an idea of how much that money that is.
Small little country, too.
I know. I think, and you hear 422 billion and you're like, oh, like, what does that mean? Because it's a lot of money. And like after after someone gets past $100,000, I'm like, I don't even know what that means. Right. Well, the global apparel industry, meaning all the clothing that is made and sold every year on this entire planet, is estimated to hit $344 billion in revenue this year. So the Japanese tourism market is bigger than that.
Wow.
Yeah, really, really big deal. Because if we stopped completely making and buying clothes, just like turned off a switch tomorrow, I mean, there would be like devastating economic effects, right? So in 2020, I would say that probably Japan closed its borders by March for sure, or very early in March, maybe. That tourism number dropped to less than half of that, landing at a little bit more than 22 trillion yen. And that's a difference of about $254 billion, which is larger than the amount of money Americans spend on clothing every year. I mean, it's like a big chunk of money. And that means a lot of small businesses, a lot of service workers, a lot of retail, just rippling effects on the economy in Japan.
That is so sad.
It is. It's really hard for me to imagine what it must have felt like in some of the cities. This was a major blow to many, many businesses and people throughout Japan. And when you think about it, tourism supports so many different industries. Yeah, of course, we've got like airports and travel, but we also have restaurants, hotels, other transportation, whether it's taking a cab, a train, even public transportation, shopping. So much, especially in Japan where there's so much shopping, right? Services, whether that is people taking you on tours or helping you with your travels in a variety of different ways, like getting your papers together or Wi-Fi devices to use on your trip or SIM cards or any of the numerous other things that you end up spending money on in a trip. All of that took a major hit. And like I said in the beginning of the episode, Japan makes it really easy to drop a lot of money on souvenirs, food, experiences, because there is so much incredible stuff to do. There's something for everyone.
Just piled on top of itself. It's amazing.
Yeah. And small businesses are a key component of any tourism situation in Japan. It's very different than it is here in the United States, where real talk, a lot of hotels are parts of chains and collectives now, right? Not public transportation per se, but transportation as a whole, whether that's like train, bus, or airplane here in the United States, it's narrowed down to just a few big businesses. Even if you go to like the national parks, a lot of the services like food and shopping and even lodging are owned by large corporations now that are doing it on contract. And so, yes, there are still small businesses in tourist destinations here in the United States, but not in the way it is in Japan.
I mean, I'm guessing that that's probably also where a lot of the innovation comes from.
The small businesses?
Yeah.
I think so too. I think it's because you have to be competitive. Like, I mean, I could go on about this for hours, but, the idea of capitalism that is unfortunately failing in late stage capitalism is that people are competitive with one another, and that means they keep creating better products and services. They serve the customer better, right? They innovate. But unfortunately, as wealth inequality widens and like less companies, but they're much bigger companies, are doing most of the selling of things aren't as good for us. Competition doesn't matter, right?
Exactly.
So I saw the impact of this decreased tourism almost immediately. Narita, the bigger airport in Tokyo, has a shopping mall before security. I'm sure you've been to it, Kim. And it's actually usually full of really great shops and restaurants. It incentivizes travelers to arrive super early to take advantage of it because it's actually nice. And there's cool stuff there that you can like only get at the airport, which even saying that out loud makes me laugh, living in the land of Hudson News and like the same crappy airport stores, right? But like Dustin and I are always like, oh yeah, don't miss the mall at Narita. Like we always tell people that. Like there's cool stuff there.
Gosh, I haven't been. This is now, I gotta go.
Well, on this trip, only about a quarter of the stores were open. And in fact,
oh wow,
I think a quarter might be generous. It was probably less. And there were only
a ghost town.
It was a ghost town. It was weird. And only 2 restaurants were open. There's usually, I would say, like about half a dozen restaurants there. So what we would generally do is get to the airport early, eat one last like hot meal before we eat whatever horrendous things we're going to eat on the airplane. Can I just tell you, we flew United this time, and the food, like Kim, I know that airplane food is known for being not good, right?
Okay.
This was like shocking.
I can only imagine.
Right? So I always get a gluten-free meal. Dustin always gets vegetarian. Well, something happened where they messed up my reservation, and so I didn't get a special meal at all. And to be fair, on most airlines, the gluten-free meal, it can be kind of weird. Like there was one flight we had where, this was a few years ago, where they brought me my tray, and basically everywhere on Dustin's tray where there was a bread or grain product, they had just put a glass of water. So I had like 3 glasses of water on my gluten-free tray.
Water?
It was so weird. I was like, who did this? Anyway, so I just say, they brought us a breakfast at one point, and I opened it. They said, do you want the omelet or do you want noodles with pork? And I was like, well, I can't eat noodles, so I guess I'll have the omelet. Kim, I open it. I peel back the foil. There is an omelet of some sort in there. Doesn't look super savory. There's a weird, super mushy, like croquette of hash browns. But then running the entire length of it was this very, so gross, this very pale hot dog.
Oh no! A hot dog,
but like a pale hot dog.
Was this for the American customer? Where they're like, well, they love hot dogs over there.
Oh my god, I don't know. I gasped and covered it back up. This is so appropriate for the 69th episode of The Department. And Dusty was like, "What's going on?" And I'm like, "No, don't look under there. It's appalling." And he was like, "What?" And he looked at it and he was like, why is that hot dog so pale? I was like, I don't know, cover it up. It's cursed. We gotta just take it away. Anyway, so, airplane food, generally pretty bad. This one being exceptionally bad, but you could always count on Narita at least giving you like one last great meal.
Oh, wait, actually, I have one thing.
Okay.
Just in regards to this, I went to South Korea for a little bit. A while ago. I was there for Fashion Week there. And sorry, the dog is barking.
Oh, geez, we're pandering to him.
I know. Neil is out. He's coming back soon. Anyway, they kind of would always like kind of like rustle us up into these like these rooms that they, you know, they moved us around and they would feed us during this fashion week, and they thought that Americans love sugar so much that everything it's true, but everything was just sugar everything. It was crazy. I was like, what is all this stuff? It was just all sugar. It's like cookies and breads and cakes, and it was just like that was it.
Wow. Not even one pale hot dog.
Oh, no pale hot. I mean, I'm like, I would have loved a pale hot dog, like a little bit of protein.
It's true. Yeah, desperate times, I guess. And I just want to reiterate, like, it was a hot dog. Some of you might say, Amanda, it was probably sausage. It was the exact measurements of a hot dog.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
It was a hot dog, but
it's just a
pale hot dog. Anyway, I can't count on airplane food. I mean, we all know that, but I was like, this is the next level. Like, this is shameful. I would rather they bring me a tray that has 3 glasses of water and a dry salad on it, which is what I usually get. And I'm like, wow, I had 30 calories in 12 hours.
Oh, God.
Don't worry. I know you're feeling really anxious for me, but I did go to 7-Eleven before we got on the plane in the airport and got us some egg salad sandwiches. Mm-hmm. We also chugged 2 cans of Highball before we got on. Because like in the 7-Eleven in Narita, you can just go in there, buy a can of alcohol and drink it as you're hanging out in the airport.
Oh, that's so cute.
And so I was like, you know, it took the edge off. Anyway, okay. So I totally lost my train of thought. Okay, so we're talking about Narita and how all that stuff was closed. And that was really, really surprising to me to see so many empty spaces because like you have a captive audience in that airport and those stores were doing a great business. So a few days later, we went to Harajuku, and I'm going to come back to that in a few. But something that struck me immediately is that there were so many empty retail spaces on Takeshita Street, which I'm sure you've been to, Kim, if you were there for shopping.
Yeah.
It's super narrow. Some people call it Teens Holy Land. It's a major destination for tourists and locals alike. You get so many people taking photos of themselves at the entrance to the street. It's basically across the street from the Harajuku train station. And on weekends and holidays, it's virtually impossible to walk through the crowd. So locals go there for sure, but also a lot of tourists. And it's this super narrow street, really more of an alleyway, and it's pedestrian only. It's always been the sort of younger, more affordable little sister to Omotesando, which is the main street of Harajuku. So it's this like narrow thing. It's full of teenagers and tourists. And the street is lined from basement level to several stories up with stores and cafes. And the stores here, they do crazy amount of business. Most of them are small businesses too. There's only a few major brands like Daiso and Wago having outposts on that street. And the Daiso there is 3 stories. Although even, I will tell you, Daiso looking a little light on inventory, which I thought was interesting. And Wago is a chain of, I don't want to call it fast fashion. We'll just say youth fashion. And it's for people of all genders. They sell secondhand and new clothes. And why I say I don't call them fast fashion is that, yes, they are trendy. And I don't know anything about their supply chain, so it might be bad. But they will deliver a season worth of styles, and that's it. So it's not like what we're used to here, where it's like new stuff every day, every week, right? Like it's like, here's what we're going to have for fall. And at the end of fall, it'll go on sale, and then we're going to bring in what we have for spring, and like that's it. So it's not constantly like new arrivals. And I would say the price point is in line with like maybe Urban Outfitters, you know, and a similar like demographic for sure. So those are Daiso and Wago are the only like bigger companies that you'll find on Takeshita Street. There is a McDonald's there, which I think has been there forever, but there are no other Western brands there as of now. What you will find are lots of way ahead of the trends clothing and accessories, along with stores selling Lolita stuff, lots and lots of cute snack places. Like if you love an Instagrammable food, this is where you're going to find it. There's also a coffee shop there that makes these really amazing, like thick, pillowy pancakes with strawberries on them. 5 stars. One time, Dustin and I separated in Japan so he could go look at record stores, and I immediately got on the train, went to Harajuku, went to this coffee shop and had a pancake, and I was like, this is living. Although people were smoking in there, which I was like, oh, I forgot that people smoke. Anyway, so there's all
Do they still smoke inside?
Yeah, in cafes you can. They have some sort of special
I do remember
permission,
that.
but not necessarily in restaurants, right? I haven't really encountered smoking in like regular restaurants, just in these like cafe coffee shops. They're definitely like their own special category of thing. But there are like smoking rooms in every hotel, airport, etc. Like we checked into a hotel in Tokyo for one night near Tokyo Station just so we could like sleep before we got on the train to Kyoto the next day. And after we walked around the corner from the front desk to go back to our room, we passed the like smoking room where you go just sit in there and smoke. And I'm sure maybe you noticed when you were there, Kim, the like smoking parks. Like, you aren't allowed to just walk around and smoke in Japan.
Oh, out on the street.
Yeah. There's signs everywhere. You'll be fined.
Yeah, I think you get fined for it.
Yeah. So you can only smoke in smoking rooms or in smoking parks. And the people in the smoking parks, they look so sad. They're just, like, smoking as fast as they can, and no one's talking. It's very weird. But yet there are cigarette machines everywhere. Like, people are smoking. You just don't see it. Anyway, so Takeshita Street, full of all this cute and amazing stuff. It's also the hub of kawaii culture with really cute candy stores, all the gifts ever, and even a small mall that's called the Cute Cube. This is like prime real estate with a steady flow of customers virtually guaranteed every single day of the year, unless there aren't any international tourists. And in general, for the first time ever, I saw so many empty retail spaces on Takeshita Street and in general just in neighborhoods that draw a lot of tourists, whether it was in Tokyo or in Kyoto or even in Osaka. Like just empty spaces in areas that are usually full and thriving. Now, when we were there last week, it was the New Year holiday, and basically all offices are closed, school is out, and so everywhere we went was super busy, including Harajuku, but it was Japanese people. It wasn't international tourists. So we still got the crowded experience, but you could see how many places were just gone. And specifically, it was the smallest businesses that disappeared. And Dustin was like, well, maybe they were always just hanging on. And I said, I don't think that's the case. I think that they did a really strong business, but when you take it away for almost 3 years, you can't survive it. You can't survive it.
Oh.
So it's going to be interesting to see what moves into those spaces. They are still empty. I didn't see anything going on inside them. And I hope it's not disappointing because I feel like that street and that neighborhood as a whole are really special. They're really like a community hub. One thing I did see, and this was everywhere we went, but specifically in Harajuku, was this general sort of gentrification, which I was telling Kim about earlier this week. And it was specifically gentrification by big Western brands.
Oh, it just makes me so sad.
Makes me so sad. So we're talking big Western brands like Nike, Adidas, The North Face, and Levi's. Now, they've always had locations in Harajuku, smaller footprint spaces, but they were there. And, you know, to be fair, what we consider dead American brands like Toys R Us, Dean and DeLuca, and Tower Records are still going very strong and thriving in Japan.
That is fascinating.
I know. And by the way,
was it Dean and DeLuca?
Yeah, we saw one in Kyoto, and I was like, wait, what? Is this like a ghost? But people were coming in and out, and they were looking so happy. And then I looked it up, and there were locations all over the place. And Tower Records has a very delicious cafe.
Oh,
FYI. I've been, yeah, once. I mean, it wasn't like a planned thing, but we were like, wait, what? Tower Records is like our first trip to Japan, and we were like, there's a big Tower Records in Shibuya. And I was like, wait, what? How could could this be? And we were both like, oh man, we loved Tower Records so much when we were teenagers. So we went in, we went all the way to the top and walked all the way down, and it was entirely CDs with some books and some gifts. But there was a cafe that we were like, well, we got to know what's going on at the Tower Records cafe. So we sat down and had a little light lunch, and it was really, really good.
Oh, that's lovely.
So American brands have had a place, and Western brands have had a place in Japan for quite a while, but not in a way in which they would be overshadowing or overtaking a neighborhood from Japanese brands and small businesses. But things have changed in the past few years, like definitely since the last time we were there in 2019. The size of the spaces that these big brands occupy in Harajuku, it has expanded so much. And that was so disappointing to me. I mean, because for one, like, I don't really care about what's going on at the Nike store, right? But
no,
I just see that at home. But also, Harajuku has always been about Japanese brands and small brands, emerging brands,
right,
local and small business, right?
I used to subscribe to the Fruits magazine.
Exactly. And Harajuku was and still is the place where subcultures thrive and inspire others. Fruits being a really amazing example. Like, it feels like the Fruits era might be over. I don't know. I didn't see any amazing, outlandish style like I've seen in the past. But it was winter, pandemic. Maybe I'll say it the next time I go. But it was weird.
I wonder if it's shifted somewhere else. Like how Williamsburg became really gentrified, so it kind of started shifting closer into like Bushwick and all of those other different places.
That's something that we talked about because we had gone to some other neighborhoods a couple years ago that were sort of these emerging neighborhoods, but they were further outside, so it's just like a little bit more complicated to get there. But I do think that might be what is happening, and we're going to check that out the next time because we have to know.
Can't wait to hear.
Yeah, we got to know, right?
I feel like it has to. That's like, I like the creativity is not gone. Those people are still around. I can imagine that they're probably just going to be like kind of shifting away from the Nike.
I hope so, because the shift that we saw on this most recent visit, especially on the main streets of the Harajuku shopping area, it was wild. It was disconcerting when we got off the train. I was like, it's like I know where I am, but I almost feel like
where
I don't.
Am I?
Right.
This is not what I signed up for.
Tons of construction has been happening in the past few years with a lot of new buildings, like bigger, more glassy, modern buildings replacing smaller ones. And Western brands from Zara to Nike occupy huge spaces now. A lot of the cafes and smaller shops that we came to know were gone. And we're talking vintage stores and cafes. There was one cafe that was like apartment themed. We went there once because we were tired and it was so full of cigarette smoke, and then we got kind of drunk. But anyway, like, that's gone now. It's gone because now there is an IKEA basically across the street from the Harajuku station. Yep. IKEA has arrived. And we were both like, wait, what? Like, we'd seen one the day before, maybe 2 days before, in Shibuya. And it was surprising, but like, you almost kind of expect that in Shibuya because that's like more mainstream shopping, kind of. Like, it's not so neighborhoody. It's like, this is where you go shopping. Shibuya, fine. Put an IKEA in there. But then to see one right there in Harajuku was shocking. I looked into this, and I learned that IKEA tried to move into Japan in the late 70s, but it was a flop. And the company closed its Japanese store in 1986. But in the last 10 or so years, IKEA has actually been able to find success this time. It opened stores in Harajuku and Shibuya in 2020, despite the raging pandemic. Like, I want to say the Shibuya one was in like October or something of that year. They just moved forward with it. As depressing as this sounds, we saw a lot of people.
I'm not surprised.
Right? We saw so many people walking around with IKEA bags everywhere. I was like, wow, okay. And like, we didn't go into IKEA. I was like, maybe we should. Maybe it's different here. And Dustin's like, no, that's the thing about IKEA. It's not supposed to be. It would be the same. And we peeked through the window, and it was super busy. and I did see the cinnamon rolls for sale. So maybe it is
really?
exactly the same. Yeah, it was so.
Did they have like a lot of like? I mean, you didn't go inside. I'm just like imagining if they sold more of like the smaller items.
Okay, so that was something that we talked about. We're guessing, I mean, this is basically from looking in the windows and trying to grasp the layout of the store, that probably you can order furniture, but it has to be delivered.
Yeah, that would make sense.
So that, like, you didn't...
It's like showrooming.
Yeah, it looked more, to me, like a little bit more elegant than the regular IKEA, but I think that's also because, like, we were looking into the showrooms and not, like, what is it called? Like, self-service furniture pickup or whatever.
Yeah. Exactly. Pulling your car around.
Yeah. No one's doing that there, but really, really disappointing. And that complex that IKEA occupies is filled with a lot of other big Western brands, and like all the businesses that were there before are gone. So, I'm not surprised by this. I mean, this is like how the world has been going. There was still a lot of construction happening while we were there, so it's going to be interesting and possibly depressing to see what is there when we come back. Like I said, I saw an enormous Zara that wasn't there before. It was sort of diagonal from La Fourette. And there is a Shein shop on Cat Street.
Of course.
Time Out calls Cat Street the spiritual home of Tokyo's vibrant street fashion culture. And I will say, definitely, it was. It has always been the home to the coolest small brands. Now there's a Shein there. I mean, I feel like that is a metaphor for something. It says something about a changing Harajuku, right? None of this surprises me, like I said, because we see this kind of big brand gentrification all over the place. It's been happening here in Austin on South Congress. South Congress once being like the coolest neighborhood full of local businesses. And now we've got brands like Nike, Reformation, Lululemon, and Love Shack Fancy moving in there into brand new builds, while small businesses move out because they can't afford the rent anymore. In terms of Harajuku, I can't help but think that several years without tourism really created this situation in which small brands, small businesses, they couldn't continue to keep their doors open after missing all those years of business because who could, right? But big companies had the resources to weather that storm, and then they could swoop in on the available real estate as things start to reopen, right? So the pandemic created this.
All this like incredible real estate that they've been just, gagging over is finally free.
Right. So that's all very depressing. But there is some good news. And here's one thing. Secondhand shopping is bigger than ever in Japan for customers of all ages and aesthetics. And, we talk here about, we are living in kind of a renaissance of secondhand shopping here in the United States, right? But the secondhand shopping we're talking about is, for the most part, online. It's like Poshmark and Depop and Mercari and Etsy and people selling straight to you on Instagram and all these other places. And yes, there are places to shop IRL for secondhand clothing, but not in the way it is in Japan. And in fact, in Japan, people just don't shop online like we do here. Brick and mortar is very much alive.
They don't.
Right?
Exactly. Shopping online it's always been sort of it's a different cultural situation.
Totally. So vintage has always been a big deal in Japan, and specifically Western vintage, with the vast majority of vintage for sale in Japan coming from the US and Canada. I have so many friends who are in one way or another part of that supply chain of getting vintage from the United States, from Canada over to Japan. And they make a good living. And if you go to the Rose Bowl flea market, you'll see tons of Japanese buyers in there sourcing to take back home. But now, for the first time, I saw straight up secondhand contemporary clothing stores as well. And someone called out something. I posted a video on Instagram of secondhand shopping in Osaka. And someone said, it's interesting. There, they just straight up say used clothes. But here in the United States, we like tiptoe around that. And we're like secondhand, pre-loved, that kind of thing. But we don't say used, but they are. I don't understand why we don't. Like, nobody's like, ew, you bought a used car? I don't know. It's really weird. We're all weird. Anyway, and like I said, like, secondhand clothing is a big brick and mortar business in Japan, all retail in Japan for the most part is really dependent on brick and mortar business because e-commerce isn't a big deal in Japan the way it is here. In fact, man, I always say, and I know you feel the same way, Kim, that you could learn a lot about how to run a successful brick and mortar retail business by just spending a couple of days in Japan and going from store to store. Whether it's a one-off boutique or like a national chain, they all really nail their merchandising, their storytelling, the in-store experience.
Yeah, the customer experience is a very cultural phenomenon.
And like the product assortment, it's so much more dialed in than we see here. Even like big chains, every store location will feel unique and neighborhood focused. It's so dialed in to who is going to be shopping there every day, giving them exactly what they want. And I think many retailers here in the United States and in other Western countries really fail because they try to be something to everyone. Mm-hmm. And Japanese retail is like, no, this is our immediate service area, and this is who we're going to focus on.
And they're gift wrapping.
Oh my God.
Don't even get me
started. I know.
Oh my God, incredible.
It's true. Also, one time, of course, I got my period while I was in Japan and I couldn't find tampons. So I had to go buy pads, and it was like a really intense experience all around because I, for the first time ever, felt embarrassed buying hygiene products, at least the first time since I was a teenager. And so I was like, I'm going to buy some other things too to disguise this. Like the classic move, right? I'm like, oh, I'm going to get this conditioner and like...
Are you shopping with my dad?
Oh, yeah, he was with me, actually. It was great. He kept calling them sanitary napkins. It was really awkward. Anyway, so I take...
No, he doesn't call them sanitary napkins. He calls them ladies' goods.
Oh, I like that.
Ladies' things.
That sounds like a brand. One of my best friends growing up, her name was Shannon Lynch, and her dad, she had only sisters and a bunch of them, right? And for some reason, her dad handled all of the shopping, and he called them sanitary napkins. And he'd be like, girls, I got you more sanitary napkins. And I was like, your dad can never say that around me again. I'm like so embarrassed. I know. Anyway, so I go up to the register with my basket of random things and sanitary napkins, and the cashier is a man, so I immediately feel embarrassed because I know this is a thing, right? I know it's going to be a thing. He rings up all of my non-hygiene product stuff and wraps it up like in a normal bag and puts it in a bag. Then he takes the bag of pads, goes around a corner where he wraps them in a piece of paper and tapes it up completely, puts that in a bag, then brings that bag and puts it in the other bag so that I will never have to accidentally bear the shame of people knowing that there are pads in that bag. And I was
my gosh.
I feel so embarrassed right now. It was wrapped up like a Christmas gift, basically. And I was like, Dustin, this is wild. This is what I picture the 1950s were like. I don't know.
Yes. I'm sure my dad would have actually really appreciated that.
Just in case, like, he tripped and his bag went flying and the thing went flying out. Yeah, no one would know. They'd be like, oh, that's just a gift.
I told you the story about how one of his friends was attacked by a box of tampons and it broke his glasses and he fell on the ground. Okay. And then my dad refused to go into the women's needs aisle.
Stop. I think everybody who's listening to this can agree that how did that happen? It didn't happen. Okay.
It didn't happen.
Even let's just say we pick the heaviest, biggest box of tampons we can think of. Like they have a plastic applicator and there's like 100 of them and they're extra super or whatever.
What are you at Costco?
Yeah, it's still not going to break your glasses.
No. Yeah, it's like it fell on his head. It broke his glasses. It knocked him down.
No, nope, did not happen. This is like this story that my grandma told us growing up, and it was the reason we could never go to Burger King. And I took it as like the Lord's gospel until I was an adult.
Of course.
And I was like, this doesn't add up. So according to her, an elderly man went to the Burger King, I don't know, in the town where my grandma lived, I think. And he asked for water. And they said, I'm sorry, we don't give water to people who aren't customers. And he died.
Oh, God, that sounds like, yes, I'm familiar with these types of stories.
And so we could never go to Burger King when I was a kid, which romanticized it for me. I was like, oh,
of course,
the promised land, the exotic food that we call Burger King. Someday, when I'm old enough,
to the elderly.
Yeah. Anyway, I reached adulthood. I remember someone asking me if I'd ever been to Burger King, and I said no. Like, here's why, and I told them the story, and they were like, Amanda, you don't believe that story, do you? And I was like, yeah. And they were like, I feel like we're missing some of the plot. And people don't just fall over dead because they are denied a cup of water. And I was like, oh, yeah, I guess they're right.
All of a sudden, there's cracks in your grandmother's story.
I know, but I think she really believed it. Just like your dad believes that story about the man being attacked by a box of tampons being thrown to the ground.
Or made it up. I think he still talks about it to this day. So, I mean, it definitely was a trauma.
Well, I'm sorry for him. Anyway, yes, that was we really took a detour there. But
I'm sorry, everyone.
No, I'm glad. I think it's really important for people to know that people might be spreading untrue stories about
false rumors
about tampons,
the feminine needs aisle.
In fact, I would just invite all of you, if you have a story that someone told you as a kid that you now as an adult believe might not be true, send it our way, because we would love to talk about those here on the pod. I know we're not the only ones.
No, we're not.
But anyway, back to Japan. You and I touched on this a couple episodes ago, but I just wanted to say again, can we just talk about how amazing the malls are? Like, they're not, even just like being in them, they're so good. And it's not like a Western mall.
No, it's not like the same Abercrombie everywhere, the same Gap. It's just like these incredible assortments, and they're all, they're specific to their customer demographics. They all like appeal to some different sensibility.
Absolutely.
It's awesome.
Like, the brands that are in a specific mall space are really curated to one specific demographic group, whether that's teenagers or adults with a lot of money who like, higher end brands, or like vintage influenced outdoor wear, or what have you. You'll find a mall like that. I did go to one mall once in Kyoto. It was years ago. I think Dustin had forgotten socks or something like that. And I was like, oh my God, he doesn't bring socks on vacation. We went over to this mall that was near the train station, and it felt like a pretty Western mall. There was even a Forever 21 in there, which is where Dustin bought socks, I'm pretty sure. That one felt like the most like a Western mall, but with like way nicer bathrooms, in that, like, as we are used to here at malls, each store was in its own siloed, separate space with a door that locks and probably its own bathroom, and like it's its own space, right? That's independent of the space next to it. It's not connected to the store next to it. But the malls in Japan tend to feel more like open, multi-vendor brand concepts, where the customer just meanders from brand to brand, not separated by walls. And each brand will have like its own staff in their space, but there's not walls and a door closing it off. Like, they might have their own fitting rooms too for that space, but like, you walk 5 more feet and suddenly you're in another brand space, right? Like, you're in another store, if you will. Anybody who says that brick and mortar is dead needs to go to Japan to learn how to do it better, because it feels like an experience. It doesn't feel like going to the mall. When you find the space that is the aesthetic that you like, you are just like, I can't believe how one thing after another appeals to me. Because we're used to being like, if you do go to the mall, you're like, okay, there's 3 places in there I'm going to go, and then I'm getting out of here. Like,
exactly. Right. And it smells, and I have a horrible headache.
Yeah, exactly.
Get me out of here.
So basically, from carefully curated malls and these amazing shopping areas to more limited product assortments and cohesive visual storytelling, Japanese retail just kills it in a way that, as a longtime buyer and merchandiser, I can really appreciate. Like, I am just like, wow, like, amazing.
And it makes sense why the online shopping culture isn't as strong or pervasive. I mean, literally, the shopping in Japan is just so phenomenal.
Why would you go
and
online?
The experiences, exactly.
Everything is just more intentional, more curated, and more special. And shopping online there is really difficult. You're not going to see that kind of assortment. The websites are not built out from a UX experience.
Exactly.
Yeah, they're not what we're accustomed to here because people will prefer to shop in real life.
Yes, and even if a brand really tries to put in, I know this from experience, tries to put in an effort to build up their e-commerce brand, the customer just doesn't convert there. It's just not where they're shopping. So even if you had an amazing site, it's not going to be a particularly strong performer.
Truly. I mean, I would love to see data on this. But I speculate, and I feel as if I'm correct here. I would suspect that if you encounter a Japanese retailer that has a decent e-commerce experience, it's probably because they're shipping a lot overseas.
Yes, it's international.
Yeah, for sure. But back to secondhand shopping in Japan, we're talking actual stores all over the place, serving all aesthetics from streetwear and sneakers to cool men's outdoor heritage brands to fun kawaii fashion. I even saw a store in Osaka, Amerikamura, which is a secondhand focused shopping neighborhood. Like every store is secondhand. It's pretty amazing. There was a store in there that was all secondhand Lolita clothing and accessories, which was really cool. I mean, just amazing to see it everywhere. And all these stores are super busy. People are walking around with their bags. I would love to see more IRL secondhand shopping in the US that isn't thrifting. Like, I know that malls kind of suck at this point, but imagine if you could go to the mall and buy secondhand. That would be amazing. Like, someone needs to bring that experience to the mall because people are ready for it here. And, people who are a little shy about shopping secondhand are often really worried about fit and not being able to try it on. If they buy it on Poshmark or Depop, it won't be returnable. But imagine if you could just go to the mall and next to the Apple store, you could get cool secondhand clothing.
I feel like I actually saw that outside of Las Vegas.
Oh, really?
At like Prim or something, which is like that town outside of Vegas.
Oh, yeah.
They have these, these malls. They have these like outlet malls and things. And of course, everyone was struggling so much during the pandemic. We actually went in there to find. We didn't go to the mall, but we went into the parking lot because we were trying to find some food or something. I don't know why. For some reason, I always end up in Prim. I have no idea. Like, I don't know why I'm always in Prim.
I feel like I always end up having to pee somewhere in Prim.
It's just Prim. Jeez. Anyway, I remember seeing this giant, like everything else was like, you could see like the shadow outline of the logo on the building because they had been taken down. But what was in there now was a giant thrift store. And I was like, that's so smart.
So smart. I mean, what we need is like 1,000, 10,000 more Buffalo Exchange-esque stores that are accessible to people outside of the city or who don't have time to go to flea markets or are nervous about shopping online. Like, let's just get those out there for everyone without all the dumb, like, new downtown fast fashion clothes that a lot of places like Buffalo Exchange are now selling. Get that out of there. No one needs it. Yeah. But I think this is a trend that I would love to see make its way from Japan, And
and I think that's awesome.
So fingers crossed. If anybody wants to start this big secondhand clothing chain, talk to me. Okay. So let's talk about the fashion trends that we saw. And I'm going to preface this by saying, like, listen, just because it's a fashion trend doesn't mean you need to adopt it. It doesn't even need that you need to buy new clothes for it. You might already have clothes that fit this in your closet. You can secondhand the little things that you need if these are things that sound right for you. What I love about fashion trends actually is for people who have been wanting to dress this way for a long time but felt too nervous, now they have their chance without feeling like they're wrong. They get to feel empowered to take that risk to try something new. So doesn't mean I want you to go to Shein right now and load up your cart. And I mean, honestly, the trends that I was seeing there, they align so well with this culture of secondhand first. All of the like less expensive fashion retailers like Wago, and there's another one called Spins and a bunch of other more, we would call them more juniory, I guess. All of them, at least 50% of their store footprint was secondhand clothing at this point, mixed in with new. And I thought that was incredible.
That really does say something.
That really says something, yeah. Mm-hmm. So the first trend that I saw, I'm tentatively calling it grandparent core, but we might call it Boomercore. Because it's not like what we think of when we think granny. We think doilies and flower prints. And, all of these previous grandma trends were really like truly what we think of as grandmas. But real talk, the boomers are grandparents, okay? So we're talking about that generation of grandparents when we talk about grandparent core. And it's really about what boomer grandparents might wear. Like maybe what they started wearing in the early 90s and they just kind of kept wearing. Mm-hmm. Okay, so we're talking straight up Coldwater Creek style sweatshirts, which I know you're a big fan of. Kim.
Yes, I remember. That's mall. That's 90s mall.
Oh, so 90s mom. We're talking like maybe a cardinal in the snow, or I showed some to you that were like, here's like a Springer Spaniel out in a field of wheat and like a goose is flying by.
Oh, gosh, yes.
Nature-y kind of stuff. Dustin has this amazing sweatshirt that we thrifted, which I'm always like, every time he puts it on, I'm like, thanks for finally dressing in a way that appeals to me. Like, this is his version of wearing lingerie for me. And it's like a navy blue sweatshirt. And it's all these different illustrations of fall things on it. It's a total grandma sweatshirt. It's like, here's some pumpkins. And
this
then,
is hilarious.
Here are the geese flying south and all of that. And like a barrel of apples, all of that. Anyway, I'm always like, thanks for putting on your sexy sweatshirt. So Coldwater Creek style sweatshirts. That brand, Chaps by Ralph Lauren.
Familiar.
Such a grandpa brand. Seinfeld style jeans with like the weird fit and the stonewash light washes, you know of which I speak. Chambray button-ups, but like literally buttoned up and tucked in. Kind of ugly Skechers-esque shoes.
This is like that ugly core, norm core situation.
But like a little bit more boomer.
Like boomer real, like older person, even older.
Yeah, even older, right? Fleece zip-ups, very 90s mixed stitch sweaters, purple and yellow worn together, which to me is so late 80s, early 90s to me.
It's also, it feels like the bottom of the barrel at the thrift store, like 5 years ago.
Totally.
And now it's cool.
Now it's cool, all of this stuff, right? One thing we called out were these kind of uncool 90s sunglasses. So Dustin and I were sitting in a restaurant in Kyoto, and he was like, oh my God, is that Maurice Gibb out there? And I was like, who?
My God.
And he was like, when you and Kim talk about this, you need to include a picture of Maurice Gibb, which I have.
I was wondering why you put his photo in here.
These are these like really tiny wire glasses with colored lenses, which were totally a thing in the early 90s. And Dustin
wasn't like David Letterman's
totally
also?
Exactly.
What's his name?
Yeah.
Paul Schaefer.
It's a tough look to pull off.
It is.
And Dustin was like, here's what I see happening when I see those sunglasses on someone. I'm like, oh, this was like a guy who was like doing a cool thing in like 1991, and then he just keeps buying the same sunglasses forever. But like Kim, they were like in all the cool stores. And the guy that Dustin was like, is that Maurice Gibb? Couldn't have been more than 25. So like it was weird.
It wasn't
and
him.
He had really a haircut too, like that like Caesar-y kind of haircut that like was so big in the 90s. I think George Clooney even had it.
I remember
that is part of this aesthetic too. Just man, I took a bunch of pictures and then wasn't happy with them. So I came home and like pulled photos from retailers that I visited there. And so like all the pictures we're going to share on Instagram are actually from Japanese stores.
No shit. Okay.
Yeah.
That actually, because I'm looking at these, I'm like, these are great.
Mine is the picture of Maurice Gibb. That is
right. Still though, it's a deep cut and it really resonates for this.
He said I had to promise to include that.
It's excellent.
So the good news for all of you, if you're ready to get into Boomercore, is that go to the thrift store right now. As Kim said, it's there.
Bottom of the barrel.
Yeah, probably get a hot deal. No one's going to fight you over it.
No.
No, it's good. Kim, my question for you is, would you wear this?
Oh, yeah, 100%. It looks really comfortable, and that's kind of, that's my jam these days is just, I don't know about the sweater.
The sweaters are so Coldwater Creek, though.
Yeah, that it hurts a little bit.
Yeah.
But I'd say I do the glasses. I do all these sweatshirts. I do the quarter zip sweatshirt. Absolutely.
Okay. Well, there you go. So maybe we'll see some other people doing this as well. Okay. This is not a broad sweeping trend, but it's something that we actually talked about in our trend prediction show. And remember, I hadn't been to Japan then yet, but you know that I was very super excited about that.
You got this one.
The return of the late 90s futuristic mega platform shoe.
Yep.
It's so rocket dog. That's what Dustin said. He was like, oh my God, are those rocket dogs? And they weren't. And we saw this from like extremely high end, like $500 athletic shoes that are like artisanally made, to like shoes that we could see at Wago that might be like $50.
These also look kind of like those weird shoes that I sent you from UGG. That I was like, these are really cool, but I don't think I could wear UGGs. I
just can't because someone might yell across the room,
yeah,
hey, are those Uggs? And then I'd have to go like hide forever. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Could never show your face again.
One of the first, maybe it was the second day, we were on the subway, and some of the subway trains in Japan will show like advertisements like on a TV, you know, and there was this ad that was playing over and over again for that brand Onitsuka Tiger. And all the shoes were like rocket dog. Crazy platforms. Oh yeah,
I see this. They're great.
Of course, I wanted to buy a pair while I was there because I
was wondering.
So I didn't because I have humongous feet. I can't get them there. But I came home, looked them up on their website, and you can buy them here in American sizes. So we're gonna share some photos of those as well. But like, I was just beyond to see these shoes because they're so comfortable. I have so many like nostalgic feelings about it, and I think we're gonna see a lot more of that. I mean, I can't wait to see what Ty comes up with.
I know.
As part of this trend.
Was literally just thinking that. I was like, I really hope Ty's listening to this.
Yes, I hope so too. Okay, so the shoes I just talked about are kind of part of the next trend. And this is another great trend that you can pull together entirely secondhand and with stuff you already own. It's the 90s skate life. And this is a personal favorite for me as someone who, I mean, this is episode 69. I'll just go ahead and say I was titillated by 90s skate culture. I was so titillated by it that I wallpapered the ceiling of the closet where I slept freshman year of college with pages ripped from Trans World Skate. I mean, I just loved the aesthetic. I thought everyone who did it was so cute and sexy.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
So seeing this in Japan felt like running into a friend you haven't seen for a long time and being reminded of how much you adore them. Like, I was just beside myself.
Was it the boys and girls wearing it, or just the boys?
Both.
Okay.
Both. All of these trends, except for the last one I'm going to talk about, were very unisex, which I appreciated. That it didn't feel so divided aesthetically. So we're talking wide leg jeans, like mega wide leg jeans, almost raver level. Humongously oversized hoodies and sweatshirts, humongous flannels, and like that 90s kind of plaid that is sort of like, I don't know, it's got like a fade to it or something. I put some photos in here. It's not buffalo plaid, and it's not like a vintage plaid. It is this very specific kind of plaid and plaid flannel that was so 90s.
I know what it is. Yeah, it's the one that I had a bunch of them. I got them
Me too. But you haven't seen it since then, you know?
Yeah, no, it has not been big. I remember, I got it from, what was in the mall? Not the Limited, but...
Express?
Yes, Express.
Ah, man. Back when Express had, like, really nice clothes. Yeah. Yeah, so that 90s flannel, hugely oversized, humongous cargo pants. Bucket hats. Huge. Bucket hats, oversized pom-pom beanies, meaning not the beanie is oversized, but the pom-pom is really huge. That's also so 90s. We saw this pant over and over again that stores were calling easy pants. And they're sort of like, Dustin was like, I think these are the kind of pants you wear in prison where you just pull them on. They're like woven twill and there's a drawstring. But Dylan's father wore these all the time, and he got them at Urban Outfitters in like 1999, and he was like the coolest dude. It's those pants. Hairy, oversized Kurt Cobain cardigans.
Yep.
You know, like mohair or fake mohair. those very specific, you've seen Kurt Cobain wearing them, 90s Jackie O sunglasses.
Yes, that are like narrow.
Yeah. Often the lenses are colored. Ball chain jewelry.
Oh, whoa, really?
Yeah, yep. And very excited about this, the return of the cargo maxi skirt.
Oh, I was just talking about that.
I know, a personal fave of mine. You rock that with some Rocket Dogs. I mean, that's a look.
It's
right?
Yeah, that sounds comfort.
Yeah. So I like love this trend. I think it's very easy to adopt if you want to, or try out with stuff you already have and maybe some secondhand items or borrowing stuff from your friends. I would 100% wear this. Would you wear this?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I used to wear this.
Yeah, totally. Right. This was like so nostalgic for me, but like in a good way, not where I was like, oh God, now I feel old. I was like, oh, I feel happy. And once again, like from the pants to the sweaters to the flannels, you could buy this stuff brand new for sure, but you could also, like, in terms of how I was seeing it presented in stores in Japan, like there might be a section of these kinds of items that were brand new, but then there would be even more of a selection of secondhand versions, which I just think is so great.
You know what's also really funny is that there's not like a sexy dress or like a cropped top in sight.
No, it's not that weird, like, oh, but make it cute kind of version of this at all.
I want to show off my abs.
Yeah. I mean, this actually, I was thinking about our episode about recession trends while I was in Japan, because obviously, like, Japan has been having a tough time economically for a while, actually, but the pandemic has made it a lot worse. And I felt that in general, the clothing options were a lot more covered up. Yes. It was like the hemline sort of situation. Yeah.
Exactly. That's what yes. Okay, fascinating.
Okay, so this next trend, I'm calling Craftcore. And this has actually been picking up momentum here in the United States during the pandemic, thanks to, the rise of the incredible upcycle makers on Instagram. And I can't help but wonder if this is the rare trend that is imported into Japan rather than exported. I will say that this trend was really only available at a higher price point, often in finer boutiques and pop-up shops. I saw a lot of amazing examples in Lafayette, which is this hyper cool mall in Harajuku. It's incredible. And also there's a fancy new Beams shop that opened in the Ace Hotel complex in Kyoto. I saw some like really bougie versions of this there as well. Craftcore is all about upcycling, or at least the illusion of upcycling. So we're using patchwork, mixed fabrics, crochet, other salvaged materials. If you travel in the same social media circles as me, you know this look very, very well. I saw a lot of Danskos in this space, which I'm not mad about. I actually sent a link to Kim earlier this week for these. I don't know how to describe them because they're almost sort of like futuristic Danskos.
They're like jellies.
Yeah, they're colors that are like various different colors of like sheer plastic. That's what the shoe is made of, instead of it being like solid leather or whatever. And they're so cool. Like that could be a part of this. That almost just like a point of intersection between, I think, Craftcore and the skate trend. So another thing that I saw a lot of were dried flower arrangements of all sizes. Like this is a trend for sure. And I think that is part of this Craftcore, because a lot of these dried flower arrangements were made by small makers who would have little like pop-up booths in different shopping areas.
That's so interesting.
Like in higher end shopping areas, I definitely saw a pop-up shop of dried bouquets in Lafayette, but we also saw them at some super cute boutiques in Kyoto. And it just seems like it's part of that. Like, do you wear Danskos? Do you like upcycle clothing? Here, have we got a whole thing for you? And, I shared some photos with you, Kim, of this trend. I mean, like, this is not new to us. Although some of the pieces I saw, I was like, oh my God, these are so cool. And none of this was like cheap. Like, we're talking hundreds of dollars for most of these things, which is fair because they're like handmade and there's a lot of artistry involved.
And it seems like that they actually respect the artisan's time and respect craft and put a higher price on it.
So those were like the big style trends that I saw. But I saw, for example, we talked about this tulle trend that Pinterest is predicting. I saw a lot of tulle skirts, often paired with like super oversized sweaters or sweatshirts.
Oh, that actually sounds pretty cute.
I mean, that's literally what I'm wearing right now, guys. I'm wearing a humongous sweatshirt and a tulle skirt. And Dustin was like, wow, you look like you just got back from Japan. And I was like, that's right.
That's the plan.
That's the plan. Okay, so another thing that I saw, which I was telling Kim a couple of days ago that was surprising to me, especially because, Kim lives in LA. I lived there for a long time. We got a lot of crunchy friends. Crystals.
Yes.
No, not Swarovski crystals, but like, magical crystals. Like
I really wanted to do a whole podcast on crystals as a trend. That might be a 2023.
I think that's
special.
A great idea.
But I feel like it's Amanda's special.
Do you think? I was thinking we need to get our friend who's the most into it to come and talk to us about it. Like,
do we have a friend that's really into it?
I feel like Ty's into some stuff. He will know someone.
Okay.
He'll know someone. Anyway, I saw crystal shops as we traveled around, which I had not noticed before. And I even saw more crystal-themed gifts, including fake crystal tchotchkes and all of those gachapon machines. And
Interesting.
That says something to me about it sweeping its way.
It really is.
So the other thing I wanted to talk about, and I already know an episode I'm going to do soon with you. It's about the trend. It's sweeping the world. It's big here in the United States. It's called kidult. Have you heard about this?
Yes, I have.
Okay.
Yes.
So
I mean, that cereal trend was the kidult cereal trend as well.
Yeah. So it's the cereal trend is part of this larger kidult trend, which that's going to be the next episode that I put together because I'm fascinated by it. And it's really, I mean, like I learned some fun facts. Hold on. I have them here on a notepad. So basically my employer, we are doing a rebrand with an outside agency. And, I've been like sharing all kinds of data and stuff with them as we work to like understand how we can be a better fit for our customer and really stand out there. And based on our data, I mean, they didn't tell me anything I didn't already know, but like we are really catering to this kidult customer. I just had never heard that term before. But they told me that 65% of Squishmallow customers, Squishmallows are these stuffed animals, 65% of the customers are aged 18 to 24 and they're buying them for themselves. 24% of toys that were bought between June of 21 and June of 22 were bought by adults for themselves. And this is really changing retail here in the United States. People are moving away from buying things like clothes, right? And maybe even from buying alcohol and things like that and shifting into buying toys that give them that comfort of nostalgia.
Totally.
So like Legos, for example.
It's like this emotional product.
Yeah, exactly. It's so emotional. I think that's a great way to describe it. And so, there is a robust adult market for $50 stuffed animals, let me tell you. I know all about it. So we're going to do a future episode about that. And I guess in a certain way, kidult culture has been prevalent in Japan a lot longer because people are collectors of pop culture paraphernalia, whether it's Sanrio or blind boxes or favorite anime merch, like that kind of stuff. Like it's very prevalent and there are toy stores all over the place. Like there's a great one in Harajuku called Kittyland that's like 4 or 5 stories. And yes, there are some toys in there for children, but the majority of it is for adults who are collectors. And so it's always been relevant there, right? It's coming here in a bigger way. It's definitely probably a trend that moved from east to west. And I saw this kidult trend kind of going to the next level by merging art with it, with makers creating these artisanal high-end stuffed animals, all one of a kind, all a work of art, but also capturing that child nostalgia kind of energy. We're talking $80 and up. Yeah, totally. They're like collectible art.
And they can be gifted.
Yeah, exactly. And I saw So many amazing ones. And, this isn't something we think about a lot of, like, makers creating plush. I thought that was a really cool.
That's a really cool trend.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd like to see more of that, actually. I'm going to be keeping my eye on that one for sure. I think it's amazing. And it's just another way, I think we get so hung up, like, if you're a maker and you want to have a successful business, that you have to sell clothes. But I would urge you to think more about other things that, I don't know, elicit a nostalgia and comfort with people. And stuffed animals are a really great example. And you could totally go completely like upcycled materials, and really express your creativity there. Yeah. Okay, so another one that has been going strong for years and just continues to keep going is 80s and 90s outdoor brands.
Oh, yeah, 100%.
And Dustin loves this. Oh, my God. The number of color blocked outerwear pieces I've had to look at with him over the years there. He's a hem and hauler, which I appreciate. And it means we have to try on everything 35 times and still not make a decision. And then like we're on he's a hem and hauler. And then we're on the flight home.
And he's still talking about it.
And he's like, oh, I should have bought that jacket.
Buyer's remorse. Or I guess lack of buyer's remorse.
Lack of buyer's remorse. So I'm still seeing this everywhere there. And I actually bought myself some really cute binoculars to up my bird watching game. I've been into birding basically since the pandemic began. And the ones that I bought are a collab between Vixen, which is a binocular maker, and Coleman, which, is like an American outdoor brand. They're super late 80s outdoor brand colors. They're actually really cute. I've been trying to find binoculars for a couple years now. And I wanted some that were small and metal, not plastic, because I wanted them to last.
It's like Wes Anderson, very twee.
Very, very twee. I wanted them to be small enough to fit in my purse or my pocket, but be metal and not plastic and be really high quality.
Amazing.
And I just wasn't finding them here in the United States. And Dustin said, I bet you could find some in Japan. And I was like, I don't know, like the electronics are better there, but binocular technology. And wouldn't you know, we went to Bic Camera and it was like
right there,
hundreds of kinds of binoculars.
I mean, I've been trying to find some coolers, some like a cool kind of a retro vintage cooler, but that's also high quality, and it's so hard to find. I can't find anything.
So hard. Everything is plastic.
Japan. You have to get it in Japan. Yeah.
Yeah. Apparently, I'll look the next time I'm there for you.
I do remember last time I was there, which of course was like 2018, I think. That there was a big trend in. It was like kind of nostalgic vintage like American military goods.
Still there.
Yeah. I always love that. It's really cool. It's really specific to like Japan culture to do these kind of like branding explorations around that. I love that stuff. Anyway.
Yeah. I will say, like, what bummed me out a little bit on this trip is that, and, I think this is totally the function of like what's happening economically in Japan, is that there were a lot more small stores that really focused on this vintage outdoor brand military aesthetic, and a lot of them were gone this time. And Dustin was sad.
Yeah,
so maybe they'll make a comeback. Hopefully. I know. Okay, so the last one I have, which is kind of interesting and was sort of surprising to me. And once I became aware of it, I couldn't unsee this. And I think this is really more of a print, home goods, other application trend. It's kind of a complicated one. So there's a lot of nostalgia right now for Showa era glassware. And so the Showa era was in the last century. And when the trend I'm about to talk about is really focused on the 50s and 60s, maybe the early 70s. The glassware of that era, like the most well-known brand, was this glassware brand called Adaria, which has been making glass in Japan for more than 200 years. And there is so much nostalgia for the print of this era that they used on all of their glassware. And it's like floral, but it's like very...
Oh, it's so cute.
It's like very 60s floral, right? And it's very closely associated with retro cafes, which are coffee shops that have been around since the 50s, 60s, 70s, and that haven't really changed much aesthetically. And there are some amazing ones in Tokyo, like the decor. It's like frozen in time. It's stunning. And they also serve a pretty classic menu, which includes these ice cream sodas.
They look incredible. Is that what that is?
Incredible, right? Yes. So I really wanted to go on this trip. I just could not do it. Definitely doing it the next time. But it's basically like take a beautiful glass, put some ice in there, put in maybe a green melon soda, add a scoop of ice cream, and put a cherry on top. Oh. It's like a classic dessert treat.
That is a TikTok trend waiting to happen.
I know. And so part of this nostalgia for these prints and this glassware aesthetic, part of it is also the cream sodas. It's all tied together, and the desserts and whatnot. So once I started seeing this trend, I started to see it everywhere in all kinds of product categories. So actually, I first saw it in some blind boxes at a nice toy store. And I was like, interesting. And it was all the little sodas in these printed glasses. And they kept referring to Adaria. And I was like, what are they talking about? And then I went into another store where I actually saw all kinds of stationery goods, stickers, note cards, postcards, paper, pens, you name it, washi tape, all of it, with these prints. And I was like, these prints are so interesting to me because they're very vintage. They're very colorful, but like with each print only maybe having 2, maybe 3 colors each. Like there's something about them. And then I started to realize that a lot of these prints were being applied to illustrations of glasses of soda. And I was like, what is going on here? Like I actually had to do some digging to figure out where it was coming from. And then it was like every store I went to that did home goods or stationery or gifts, or even some of the more like junior aged like gift shops and whatnot, had products with these prints on them. And the sodas, sometimes not the sodas, just the prints, but it was just everywhere.
It's like tulips and daisies.
Yeah. We're going to share all of these on Instagram for you over the coming days. This is one that is so inspiring for me, like visually.
Did you get any?
I didn't. I have regrets, obviously.
Well, you'll be back. You'll be back. Be the first place to go.
I really try to keep my consumerism in check anyway. It's really, really hard in Japan because you're like, it's everywhere and everything is stuff you haven't seen before. And then on top of that, you're not going to see it again when you go home and you're not going to be able to get it. But I just was like, well, even though I want all of this glassware, and that I guess I could buy it and take it home, but I already have glasses and I just couldn't reconcile in my brain. But I did buy a package of pens that have the prints on them. And I did get and this was something I'd been needing on my trip. I really needed like a screen cleaning cloth. My laptop screen is embarrassing. Okay, everyone. I don't know why it's so dirty. It just is. So this is one of those like microfiber cloths that you clean your screen with. And it's got like the little sodas and the printed glasses all over it. It's really, really cute. So that is what I bought. But like what I really want is all this glassware. It's so beautiful, so beautiful. And it's all like reproductions of vintage prints or inspired by it. So I think I'm excited for all of you to see the images of this because I think, especially for all of you who are really design oriented or crafty or really love color, I think you're going to find this really inspiring.
I agree. I love it. Thank you so much for sharing this one.
So the last one I just wanted to touch on for you because I knew that specifically this would be super interesting to Kimberly Christensen, is that Daiso is trying to give Muji, and I know you love Muji, a run for its money with a new concept called standard products.
What?
Seriously, Kim, the whole thing felt like we went in, and I kept saying to Dustin, like, I'm so disoriented because this feels like Bizarro Muji. Like, it was, like, honestly, I feel like Muji should be, like, a little bit mad about this. I don't know if they can, like, legally do anything about it. Probably not. But, like, you and I have spent copious amounts of time in Muji over the years.
And Daiso.
Right? So this is like section by section, I guess you would say, just like Muji, but the Daiso version of it. But like the Muji aesthetic. It's crazy.
It's even like the build out and the displays.
I know. So the first one we saw was in Kyoto. And I felt very confused because the sign outside said standard products, but like on the facade, there was a little tiny flag that said Daiso. And I was like, wait, what is this store? Yeah. And then I realized it was owned by them. And as we walked through the store, Kim, I mean, they didn't have like the clothes and the slippers and the socks and stuff like Muji does, but in terms of all the home goods, the stationery, all the novel little home organization things, the diffuser and the oils, which I think of as like the iconic Muji purchase. They have it all. And I will say I smelled all their oils and they smelled really good.
Oh.
And they were like $5.
They've even got like the craft paper boxes.
Yeah.
It is down to the nickel.
I know. It is wild. It will be interesting to see if this is something that they start doing here in the United States, because we have Muji here, right? And we have Daiso.
It would kill.
It would kill. It was all a few dollars less expensive than Muji, like everything. Yeah.
Excellent. That is really exciting.
Really exciting. Yeah. So that's my trip. I ate at least 4 egg salad sandwiches on 2 separate occasions. Kim, I went to 7-Eleven or a similar store, and they were out of egg salad, and I was forced to try something new that sounds like something you should be embarrassed to eat, but is really good. And that is a potato salad sandwich. I mean, you know that Japanese potato salad is so good. Put it between 2 thin layers of pillowy bread.
It's all like the Kewpie mayo.
Yeah,
it's just gonna be,
I'm like salivating right now thinking about it. Definitely had a couple of those. I had one of those sandwiches that is like the whipped cream and the fruit, but the bread was a little stale.
That's not acceptable.
Yeah, very, very disappointing. I told Dustin, I was like, I'm not, it's not like I eat these regularly. I deserve the fresh bread. But everything was so busy because of everybody being off of work and traveling and whatnot, that like you really had to be smart about when you hit up the konbini for dinner, because it might be empty when you get there and you might have to eat something weird. Like one night I was forced to try. I was like, Amanda, get out of your comfort zone here. Get that tray that says chicken with tartar sauce and vinegar on it.
Oh no. What?
I said, Amanda, like you only live once. It might be delicious. It might be delicious.
Like we would have never said an egg salad sandwich sounds good.
I know, right? So, and that's the mindset I was taking. Well, I'm going to tell you, I tried it and I hated it so much that I have a grudge against Lawson for even putting it there in front of me. And I made this official decision on this trip, which Dustin, he agrees with me. In terms of the convenience store food ranking, it's 7-Eleven at the top.
Yes.
Followed by Family Mart, followed by Lawson. Unless it's a Lawson Natural, which is their more like healthy organic version of Lawson, which we went to one for the first time, and that was great.
Fascinating.
But still, no, 7-Eleven is the winner. And I think here at home, if you found out one of your friends was like regularly eating at 7-Eleven, you'd stage an intervention.
Yeah, it'd be really sad.
Yeah, but there it's like, oh, wow, what a person of great taste. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. The prepared food section at 7-Eleven.
Yeah, I mean, here in the United States, what would that be?
It's going to be those eggs that have been deshelled, like the hard-boiled eggs. Oh,
yeah, totally.
You know?
I went through a weird thing where I was into those. And then my feelings on it turned down a dime. Now I can't. Yeah. So anyway, that was my trip and what I saw. I think it'll be really interesting. Like throughout this year, I'm definitely going to be operating with these trends at top of mind, our trend predictions, and Pinterest trend predictions. And we're going to be updating you through the year as we see these things happening or not happening.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. Well, that's all we have for you this week.
Thank you.
Bye.